Hey there, BookTube. Noah. Thank you for coming by my channel again. Everyone who reads it must converse. Today I'm just going to continue spotlighting authors that I love. So this one is Danielewski. The most well-known work from him is House of Leaves. You know, this was published in a serial way online and then compiled to make this this edition here. It's gone through a couple different editions. I used to have an amazing full color hardcover of this. I loaned it out and never got it back. It's one of those kind of books that you're not gonna, you know, you shouldn't really let it loan it out, because it's just an amazing kind of talking piece. It's an amazing work just to look through. You'll see there's a lot of this going on in the book. There's a lot of footnotes. There's a lot of every time the word house is written, it's in blue, and every time the word minotaur or we're talking about the minotaur is in red. And there's just the type in this is amazingly, you know, jumbled and crazy. So there's footnotes everywhere and things like that. You see there's upside down writing, things like that. And when you look at this kind of stuff, it looks like there's no rhyme or reason, and why would you know, what does it even mean? It's, you know, it doesn't look like anything. From just thumbing through it and looking, you just see this kind of wild type and stuff, and think, well, you know, it doesn't make any sense. You know, there's just stuff everywhere. But in the reading, it does make sense. You can follow it. It does make sense why it is written the way that it is. So I want to just kind of touch on it for anybody who hasn't come in contact with House of Leaves. It is a very amazing work, House of Leaves. This is a story. First you meet a guy named Johnny Turrent. Johnny Turrent is a, you know, kind of a loser, for lack of a better word. He's a tattoo artist. He has a dream of being an artist, but he doesn't really do much except tattoo artist, you know, and at least he has a job, right? You know, and he has a friend named Lude, you know, short for Quaalude, I guess. His friend Lude and him just get into all kinds of, you know, just party and, you know, just being young guys. So at the very beginning of the book, Johnny Turrent's neighbor in his apartment building dies. And he was an old guy. No, you know, no surprise necessarily. And he was an old guy named Zapana. Zapana was blind. So an old blind guy in his apartment building dies, and he's curious, he goes over to the apartment, and he finds a trunk full of writings. And next to the trunk is a big gash in the ground, in the floor of the apartment, like a claw mark or something like this, just big gashes down. And Johnny, you know, takes the trunk. He takes it and takes it to his house. As it turns out, Zapana was writing a book. Now, the book that he was writing is a exploration of a movie. The movie is called The Navidson Record. How did this blind guy see this movie? You know, is one question. But also, how is this blind guy writing a book? You know, is another question. So, as it turns out, he was dictating this book to various people and would have them write down his dictations. And so there we go. We have, you know, we're 2, 3, 4 levels removed. Now, the movie The Navidson Record, what is it about? The guy named Navidson is the main character, and his family. is the main characters, and the main character of this book actually. Navidson was a photographer for like something like National Geographic. Some high profile photographer would go to exotic locations and take pictures of things that just people don't see. So that was his thing. He was an explorer. He was a photographer. He loved that kind of thing. But he retired, and him and his family moved to Virginia, I believe, someplace remote, pretty remote, and bought a house, move in there, and things start not quite adding up. He noticed that the measurements of the house don't quite add up. Inside the house seems to be bigger than the outside of the house, just by a little bit, but things change, and he starts seeing these weird things. So he becomes a little obsessive, and he's taking measurements, and he's putting things, and he's trying to figure out what's going on with it. And his wife says, "Look, you're letting this get to you," and they go on vacation. Well, when they come back from vacation, there's a door off of his living room that on the other side of where that door is the outside of the house. It doesn't go anywhere. But inside the house, if he opens that door, it's just a hallway, and there's just a hallway with doors, with stairs, with all kinds of stuff there, and he can traverse through this, and it's just nothing in there. It's just darkness, But him being the explorer that he is, he gets together some old buddies that he knows, and they go on expeditions through this part of his house. The house is a character. The house is an unbelievable setting. It creates a great story. And this story, what it is it's exhaustive. And you don't have to do anything but read this. There's not any secondary sources needed or anything, because Johnny Turrent himself is doing the research for you. All the footnotes, that's Johnny Turrent writing these footnotes, and the actual writing is like Zappano's writing. And so you're seeing somebody, you're going through somebody researching different points and trying to figure this thing out as you're just free to experience this thing. And it's horrifying. There's some really scary stuff, as far as isolation, claustrophobia, mazes, that kind of thing. You never, it's amazing. So that's almost it for House of Leaves. If you want some more just on that book, there's a whole lot more I could say, and I could go through different points of the book, things like that. But I hope I gave you enough to just kind of know what's up, and inspire you to read it. Another thing with that though is Mark Danielewski has a sister, and his sister was pretty popular early 90s, mid 90s musically. Her name's Poe. This is her second CD, and Poe is the sister of Mark Danielewski, and this album, Haunted, is actually a companion to House of Leaves. It's amazing. There is one of the best. Haunted, Control, Terrible Thought, Walk the Walk, Wild, Hey Pretty, the 5.5 minute hallway. The 5.5 minute hallway is actually like a short film that is like, this obscure thing in House of Leaves that Navidson had filmed, a hallway that had appeared off of his laundry room or something. And and the title of that little obscure, 5.5 minutes or 6 minutes of film that is around is called the 5.5 minute hallway. Dear Johnny, that's Johnny Turrent. Lemon Meringue, Spanish Doll, House of Leaves. There's actually a track just titled House of Leaves. And Amazed. Amazed is an amazing song. There's so many amazing songs on this album. this album has kind of a cult following. I went into Second and Charles not like a couple few months ago, and saw like 30 copies of this on vinyl, and I was thinking, who knows, why do you have, nobody knows about that album that I know of, but obviously there's a cult following for it, and rightfully so. I mean, it should be very popular. It's an amazing piece of music, the whole thing. But I think it also has a following because of its affiliation with House of Leaves. It's really good. So there's that, and then so there's another companion to House of Leaves that Danielewski wrote called the Stow Letters. Now this is letters from Johnny Turrent to his mother when his mother was in a mental institution, and I believe that his mother died in the mental institution. It's part of what really has put Johnny Turrent in the kind of mental state that he's in House of Leaves. This is a prequel kind of thing, but the thing about this is all these letters have like codes and different things. It's much more than just a book. You can mess around with these little letters that are here and pull out all kinds of stuff, all kinds of hidden messages, all kinds of whether they're meant to be, it's part of the story that his mother is putting these messages in and through. And with every message you get, with every all the effort that you put in, the more effort you put into this, the more you're going to get out of it, and the scarier, the more terrifying it becomes. It is a harrowing story. Johnny Turrent's mother and what she goes through in the mental institution. So that's it for House of Leaves. I wanted to just give you some more resources for that, because people talk about House of Leaves. It's really popular, and anytime anybody brings it up and they haven't read it, I tell them, freaking read it. Read it. It's so amazing. You'll be mind blown. It's just a really crazy, well done story. But after that, Danielewski wrote Only Revolutions. Only Revolutions is an amazing book, and as you can see, what Danielewski does is experimental fiction, guys. He's an experimental fiction junkie. And so this is one story about an immortal 16-year-old couple. A picture of Danielewski right there. An immortal 16-year-old couple. And they are on a road trip, a trek across the United States. This is an amazing edition. And they are going. They have acquired a car, and they are just going. And you follow their story. One side of the book, as you could see, one side of the book is told from the 16-year-old boy's perspective, and the other side of the book is told from a 16-year-old girl's perspective. And they're not really 16; they're immortal, But so how Danielewski suggests that you read it is 7 pages, flip the book, 7 pages, flip the book, 7 pages, and both stories go the entire way through the book. So as you can see, there's writing that are face up, and then when you flip that book and go to the other side, and so this is upside down now. Now there's writing for the other side. So it's basically half pages. Now, as you read, like when you start at the beginning of a story, it's more the full page, and it just gets smaller and smaller as you go through it. So that's the same story, just further toward the end of the book. It's amazing. There's a lot of he experiments with format. across the center here is just like a ticker of the timeline, and you know, you're blistering through the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and then it ends 2053, I believe, something like that. 258, yeah, 2063. That's the last year. So it's an amazing read. It's one of my favorites. You know, I love experimental fiction, so wanted to bring that out. Only Revolutions is definitely worth a read. It is a wild ride. Another very experimental work that he did. This was originally done as a play, I believe, on a Halloween night. The 50-Year Sword. So the 50-Year Sword is very experimental as well. Everything he does is experimental fiction. This is actually an ex-library copy. So these are, you know, glued to the dust jacket here. I wish I could take it off because the actual book looks really cool. I mean, it's just great, great illustration how it's done. Hope you can see some of that. Just see how the book is, but you know, the end papers, everything is very well done. I get these hardcovers for his work because it's amazing. So this story is good. It would work better as a spoken word, as a play with the characters doing each one for sure. But it's worth a read. I've reread it a couple times, and what's cool about this is there's no names for anybody, and they're not addressed, and you can see who's talking and how they're talking by the color of the quotes. So there's quotations around each thing said, and there is a lot of illustrations to this work. There's illustrations all through it, and the quotes that are on each around each phrase or each sentence that's said is the color is which character. So you just get a sense of the different characters by the colors. It's a cool little book. One sword will kill a season. One will kill a country. One I'm making now will even kill an idea. And the whole dust jacket has these little, you know, pinholes all through it. It's an amazing work. Very, very, very cool. And then other than that, what he's been writing is another just insanely experimental piece that I have not read any of, because like I've said before in my videos, I don't like to read part of a story. I'm gonna wait until something is finished before I start reading anything. So things like graphic novels. I want to read the Saga, you know, graphic novel, but they're still doing it. So I haven't read not one word. But I hear it's really good. So things like that. So he's writing The Familiar. This is a very awesome looking work. Like all of his stuff is very awesome looking. A lot goes into his the production, the printing of his books. And so I just found this volume 4 like in the Goodwill or something, thrift store style. That's why I only have volume 4. So I just found it because when I found it and knew that I could get it for $1 or $2, I went ahead and got it because I'm gonna read all of it. Like I'm going to read this whole series, but I'm just gonna wait until you know, till he's finished with it, till he's done writing it, and then I'll jump into it. So, but I've heard great things. So that's Mark Danielewski, just to show you different things. I jam on Haunted by Poe all the time. It's really a great album, and Danielewski's a lot of fun. He's really cool, and I don't find him pretentious. I don't. You know, it's just the nature of being an experimental writer that you do stuff that is like, you know, some people can take it as you're saying, oh, look how witty, or look how smart, or look how you know, unique I am, or something like that. But you know, you can't do experimental fiction without, you know, trying something new, without going for original ideas and things like that. So, and I don't find him pretentious in his works. Um, I do think that, you know, some things are better executed than others, but you can't go wrong with House of Leaves. You can't go wrong with Only Revolutions. They're great. They're wonderful. 50 Year Sword. You know, it definitely is not as great, but he wrote it as a play, so it definitely lends itself to that, you know, performance aspect a lot more than the reading. So I hope you enjoyed this, guys. Give you a little taste of Mark Danielewski. Any you want any review of anything specifically, then that's fine. I'll go into it a little bit deeper or stuff like that. I just wanted to gloss over his works, give you a little something, and have a great Sunday, guys. Bye, BookTube.